Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Fantasy Fanatic YouTube channel. I'm Jordan, your host, and today we're going to be talking about a few things. Definitely going to talk about some of the trade news that has just happened, the breaking news. Also, SGS League, we will get a little recap going on our matchups that we had this last week. But we'll talk about a few other things first. First off, obviously the big news of the day, Diontae Johnson, my guys. Diontae Johnson is now a Baltimore Raven. He was traded about 2 hours ago. From what it's looking like, the Ravens are sending a 5th-round pick for Johnson and Carolina 6th-round pick selection. So Diontae Johnson, obviously, if we go and look at his fantasy football stats for this year, let's go look real quick. He was definitely up and down this year for sure. As we're looking at his stats for the year so far, and I believe that this is probably based off of this is half PPR just because of the league that I'm in, or half reception point. But you got 22, 17, 16. He had a couple blow-up games this year, but he's had more inconsistent games than that. But, I mean, it's not really – I don't want to necessarily say it's his fault. The Carolina Panthers are not a good offense, so he wasn't really put in a good situation coming here. And now he's arguably in one of the better situations that he's been in his career now, getting on such a high-powered offense that the Ravens have. Now, I will say that, obviously, I don't think that this is going to hurt Zay Flowers too much. I still think Zay Flowers is going to be the number one target for Lamar Jackson still. But Diontae Johnson is just a great piece for them to have on that team now. Definitely boosts their receiver core because they were kind of hurting a little bit in that department. So now that they have that, it's huge. That's big news. This could also open up more opportunities for Zay Flowers too. But Zay Flowers, I mean, he had the pretty decent game this last week. And then he had 17, 15, 18, and then he's had a couple duds as well. But really, it just all depends on the scores of the game and then the game plan too, because obviously the Ravens love to run the ball too. So if they're having a lot of success running the ball, especially early, that's kind of how their game plan is going to stay the rest of the game. So that's why it's a little hesitant with these Ravens receivers, expecting them to be consistent, like your Jamar Chases or anyone that's in a more high-powered offense when it comes to passing, the passing aspect of it. So, but yeah, very, very big news there. That's obviously going to help the Baltimore Ravens out tremendously. That obviously will hurt, which I don't even know if any of these other receivers were worth picking up. I mean, Rashad Bateman had a couple decent weeks, but I do think he did not have a good week last week. So, but we look at Rashad Bateman. Overall, he is pretty much a guy that I would definitely go and drop now. I don't think that he has any fantasy value at this point. But he did have 3 weeks straight where he dropped over double digits in fantasy points. So, and then this last game that he had 5 targets, but he only had 1 reception. So he's really just that deep threat kind of guy for Lamar Jackson. But anyways, big news there. We'll also get into that later too. Anyways, so yeah, we're getting into like pretty much halfway of the fantasy season, and playoffs honestly will be just right around the corner. Right now, we'll talk about that NFL, that Monday night game real quick, and see if there's anything really to take away from that game. From what I was seeing, it honestly looked really cool to see the success that Tyron Tracy was having in this game. So really that was a big thing that I took away from this game mostly was Tyron Tracy came and had a blow-up game, 20 carries for 145 yards and a touchdown. He did only get 2 receptions for 5 yards in the backfield. But you're very excited about Tyron Tracy going into the future. He's 100% the lead back here now. Devin Singletary has lost his job at this point. And pretty much at this point, Devin Singletary could be worth something next week because obviously Tyron Tracy did go down in this game after, and he could have a concussion. So he might be out next week. So that is definitely a good spot for Devin Singletary to come in and lead the backfield once again. But yeah, that's really the only thing to take away from this game. Daniel Jones couldn't get it going. No passing touchdowns. Couldn't get his rushing game going either. Darius Slayton had another big game. Like I said, don't want to overreact on that. Malik Neighbors still led this team in targets with 13, but he only ended up with 7 receptions for 71 yards. Wan'Dale Robinson, 5 receptions for 30 yards. And then Theo Johnson comes in. He covered his prize picks with the 3 receptions because I think it was at like 2.5 or something like that. And then you look at the Pittsburgh side of things. Another pretty good game for Russell Wilson. Definitely only gets 1 passing touchdown, but he threw for 278, 20 for 28. So very impressive performance for Russell Wilson once again. Najee Harris, also a very impressive performance, 19 carries for 114 yards. He also gets you 3 receptions for 17 yards in the backfield. So pretty good game for Najee Harris there. You're also very excited about George Pickens going into the future. Yes, he only had 5 targets, but I think he's obviously the number 1 guy here, and he will continue to be. And obviously this passing offense has gone up tremendously with Russell Wilson under center. So definitely excited to have George Pickens going into the future. Calvin Austin was the one who came away with the touchdown in this game, and he also had the punt return touchdown too. So this is really just a breakout Calvin Austin game in general. He really showed up today for them. Yesterday, for them. So big game for Calvin Austin. Does that mean you need to go pick him up? No. I still don't think any of these receivers other than George Pickens are worth a roster spot. But do continue to monitor the Najee Harris breakout games that he's having. If he continues up to this pace, he's definitely already kind of proved me wrong this year with how he's played. He's definitely played a lot better as of last year for sure. Jaylen Warren, obviously premium handcuff back, a guy that you can definitely hold on to just for that aspect because if Najee did get hurt, Jaylen Warren's 100% the guy going forward here. So, and then, yeah, that's pretty much it. For this game, Steelers go to 6-2. The Steelers have actually been playing very impressive this year. Giants are now 2-6. Honestly, not surprised. I didn't expect the Giants to be that great this year. So we'll kind of see what they do. They might go clean house with the Giants. We'll see what they do towards the end of the year. It's too early to tell right now. Still a lot of football left. So, but yeah, anyways, really, really good. Actually, a better Monday Night Football matchup than I was expecting because I wasn't expecting a lot of scoring. But we actually did get a few touchdowns in this game, so you pretty excited to see that. Anyways, I do want to start going through also some of the injuries that we have been having in the NFL as well. Let's see. I do know some of them off the top of my head. I would just like something to show me. Let's see. Injuries. Let's go to Underdog Twitter. Underdog Twitter usually gives me, that's NBA, NFL. All right, so right now, okay. Also, the other big news this week too, Anthony Richardson getting benched. Very unfortunate for all the people who drafted Anthony Richardson as high as he was this year. I was hesitant to draft him this year just because he was one of those guys that I expected to be a boom or bust type of guy, and so that's why I avoided him personally. And so far, he is definitely looking like a bust, and now he's getting benched. Joe Flacco's going to be starting. We'll see if this turns out to be a week-to-week thing or if this is permanent. I think it really just depends on how Joe Flacco plays coming into this week, but we will keep that monitored. We'll keep that up in the air right now. Another thing, too, the Texans just took a big loss this week. Stephon Diggs is actually diagnosed with a torn ACL, so he is out for the year. So Tank Dell is going up, as well as Nico Collins whenever he comes back and fully healthy. And then you also could say Dalton Schultz is going to go up as well. So this is basically the same offense other than Joe Mixon as last year when it comes to the wide receiver core anyways. You got Tank Dell, Nico Collins, and Dalton Schultz, who all were big-time fantasy players last year. Now, with no Stephon Diggs, which is a big loss for all you Stephon Diggs fantasy owners for him being out for the rest of the year. So that really sucks. But you are very excited to see maybe Tank Dell have a way bigger role in this offense now. And I mean, he'll definitely be the number one guy next week, no doubt, going into this week. So, but when Nico comes back, we already know that Nico's going to be the main guy. So, Daniel Jones still going to remain the starting QB for the Giants. I mean, apparently they see something in him still that is better than the guys below him, such as Drew Lock and Tommy DeVito. So, yeah, Tyron Tracy Jr. right now, he's just in concussion protocol. So we'll kind of like mental monitor that and see what happens with that injury. That is really all the news that Underdog has had lately. Right now, let's see. It's looking like Juwan Jennings is expected to return week 10, which that'll be the bye week. So obviously the 49ers don't play this next upcoming week. Debo's also hurt, considered day-to-day. Jordan Mason re-aggravated his shoulder injury. It's looking like Christian McCaffrey's going to be participating in simulated practices. They're hoping they can get him back in practice next week. We'll keep that monitored, too, for all you people who picked Christian McCaffrey number one this year in drafts. So that's honestly been a big hit for whoever drafted him. Allen Lazard, week to week, we'll kind of see how he is, but he'll probably be questionable coming into next game. T. Higgins considered day-to-day as well. Jawan Johnson cleared concussion protocol. Derek Carr, that'll be a big thing too. If he's expected to play this week, Derek Carr, that means that Alvin Kamara stock goes up, and then Chris Olave's stock will go up as well for sure. They will go back to being pretty dominant. We'll see what happens with Jordan Love, too. Jordan Love, he got diagnosed with a strained groin, so it's not considered major. He's day-to-day. Definitely has a shot to play this next upcoming week, so we'll see what happens with that. Jameis Winston, kind of expected this, but he's going to be the starting QB for the Browns moving forward. Brian Thomas Jr., considered day-to-day. He will most likely play Week 9. But yeah, I think that's really it for the injuries. That's what it's looking like. Yeah. So that's pretty much all the injuries that we had dealing with this week. Pretty decent amount of injuries for sure. Now, let's see. Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and go into recording mode now. All right, so now, SGS League, we are going to get into the Week 8 recap. Week 9 projections we'll do another day, but we're just going to do Week 8 recap today. So first up, had a good matchup right here with Chance and Carson. Kind of the battle of the QBs here. The QBs put up a lot of points this week. Brock Purdy with a massive game. 31 points against Dallas. Really came to light in that second half, feeding the ball to George Kittle. Lamar Jackson, once again, just another impressive fantasy performance. You're going to get this from him every week. So, Breece Hall, David Montgomery. Breece Hall with a little bit of a down game for sure. You would expect him to do better than that. But unfortunately, not a good game for him. David Montgomery, I mean, continues to be very consistent. Got, once again, another touchdown in this game. And then the receivers, a little bit down on Michael Pittman right now, but you are very excited to start him next week with Joe Flacco under center. Zay Flowers with a big game. Little concerned, obviously, about Diontae Johnson being on the Ravens now, but I do still think Zay Flowers will be the top guy on this team, receiver-wise. Very excited about Njoku in the future. Njoku, obviously, with Jameis Winston under center, he's going to continue to thrive. So he put up 14 this week, decent performance. Ezekiel Elliott kind of ended up being the lead back for Dallas in this game. Got you that touchdown, so that really helped you in the flex spot chance. But yeah, very impressed with how Chance is just continuing to pull out wins. And it doesn't matter how many points he scores. He just continues to pull out wins. I mean, he's beat now 2 of the top fantasy teams so far this year in Carson and Burt now. So very impressive performance by Chance. He continues to dominate in the Sooners division. And now he is number 1 overall record-wise in the SGS League. So congratulations to Chance on that. We'll see if he has a chance to win his second SGS fantasy football title, which he won the first one. Is he going to win the fourth? We'll find out. Carson, we'll talk about your team a little bit real quick, too. I mean, obviously, Kenneth Walker, Chuba Hubbard, very disappointing performances this week for both of them. Considered tough matchups. Obviously, the Seahawks were down the whole game, so Kenneth Walker really did not get involved rushing-wise. Chuba Hubbard, very tough matchup against Denver, so considerably so. I had a feeling he wasn't going to perform that well. You were kind of expecting Tyreek Hill to have a better game than this with Tua back, but obviously once Tua gets back into the field of things and everything, I think Tyreek Hill is going to start putting up some monster performances for you. Really the biggest surprise obviously was Amari Cooper, almost putting up a donut. I mean, going into the future, I still think Amari Cooper is going to be their number 1 guy. This was just a big week for Keon Coleman and Khalil Shakir. I do still think Amari Cooper was brought to be number 1 in this wide receiving core for a reason. I still think he just needs to learn the playbook, get comfortable with the offense a little bit more, and then I think he will end up succeeding in the future. Jake Ferguson, obviously, he's been a little up and down this year, but I still am high on him. I still think he's the second option on this Dallas offense. So, and then Debo, obviously, he's just been up and down just because of the injury aspect, illness aspect. I mean, the dude just been having so many problems this year. Honestly, it's just how Debo is every year, for being honest. Dude, honestly, always has a hard time staying healthy, but when he is healthy, he's one of the better players in fantasy football. So, obviously, you lost Christian Kirk for the rest of the year. So that kind of takes a little bit of a hit in your depth on your bench, but you're not too disappointed in it, obviously. So, and then Tank Bigsby on your bench is still solid. You still got some solid, a couple solid bench pieces. I mean, Wicks is definitely a guy that could spark at any moment, and then Emmanuel Wilson's a pretty decent premium handcuff back to have as well. So, but yeah, Chance, congrats on the dub. Carson goes to 6-2 now. So Carson, and you ain't got nothing to worry about. So your team looks just fine. Next up, we got Jack and Connor. Jack comes in and gets a dub. Jack is starting to get a couple wins under his belt. Obviously, Baker Mayfield has been leading the way for him this year. Baker Mayfield continues to dominate in fantasy. He's been an amazing fantasy QB this year. And you would have expected him to take a dip with no Godwin and no Mike Evans this week, but he decided to just absolutely feed the ball to Cade Otton. And Cade Otton has a massive performance this week. Alvin Kamara, big performance for him. I mean, he's just going to continue to be that full PPR monster. And then obviously the Ray Davis. I mean, you just don't have any running backs. I mean, you're still waiting on McCaffrey to come back. So really that's what sucks for Jack's team right now. It's just kind of been waiting in the realm to have McCaffrey back. But you're very excited about Tank Dell, Jack. I mean, I would be very excited to have Tank Dell on this team going into the future, especially with no Stephon Diggs now. Tank Dell is going to have to fill in a bigger role every week now. So you could expect to see some bigger bigger weeks for Tank Dell going into the future. Jalen McMillan, I think he is definitely still a guy that you keep rostered just for the time being in case Mike Evans is rolled out again. But Jalen McMillan, I think he's going to continue to have a pretty decent role in this offense. He did get a lot of targets in that game. If I'm not mistaken, at least 7, right? Yeah, he got 7 targets in that game. So, just continue to have him rostered, I believe. And then maybe if you want to start him in the flex, you could. George Kittle obviously has been absolutely amazing this year. Best tight end in football so far from a fantasy perspective. Other than that, you're very excited to have Christian McCaffrey hopefully coming back in Week 10. And then a little bit of some optimism with Gabe Davis, actually, because with Gabe Davis, with no Christian Kirk now, Gabe Davis could emerge as the number 2 option on this team. So you are a little excited about Gabe Davis, too, going into the future. But yeah, Jack got the win. Connor's team, as we look into this, Jared Goff, he didn't really play the best this week, but he just didn't throw the ball a lot. Saquon Barkley had a good game. Not to his standards, but you'll take it from Saquon. He just got robbed of 3 rushing touchdowns from Jalen Hurts this week, so... Jaylen Warren obviously was kind of a boomer bust. You just wanted to get a touchdown from him in a way. And didn't get that from him this week. Unfortunately, just not a good game. Najee Harris continues to dominate that backfield. Stephon Diggs, Darnell Mooney. Obviously, Connor, big loss not having Stephon Diggs anymore. Going into the future now, that does kind of hurt your wide receiver room, but you still do have Olave and Darnell Mooney, so those guys will definitely be your guys you could start on a week-to-week basis. You still have Keenan Allen, who's been a little up and down this year. Lazard's hurt as well. Darius Slayton's had a couple big games as of lately. But yeah, Olave and Darnell Mooney are probably going to be your guys you're going to have to start going forward, and then you're going to have to figure out that flex spot. Maybe you'll get ETN back, but I don't really know what to expect with ETN anymore with Tank Bixby kind of taking over that backfield. But yeah, anyways, big win for Jack. He's now 3-5. Connor's going to go to 4-4 now. Next up, we got Easton and Seth. Easton's team absolutely dominated. I think they put up the most points in the league this week. They did. So congrats to Easton. Big time week for his team. Obviously starts with Jalen Hurts. Jalen Hurts with an absolute monster game with 39, 3 rushing touchdowns and a passing touchdown. Bijan continues to play very well, especially these last 3 weeks. If you look, 20, 21, and 24, he's putting up monster numbers now. Bijan is really starting to take advantage of these really good matchups that he's having. Dallas, honestly, is not going to be a bad matchup for him next week, too. So you are excited to continue to have Bijan on this team. You're also very excited to have Tyron Tracy, too. Tyron Tracy is actually looking really good, putting up 22 this past week. Obviously has the injury, so you're probably not going to have him this week, but luckily you still have Singletary, so you can use that handcuff back right there to use that. I don't really know what's going on with Jonathan Brooks. We'll kind of see what happens with all that, too. Obviously, blow-up game for Ladd McConkey. Blow-up game for Cade Otton as well. You're very excited starting both of these guys going into the future. More Cade Otton than Ladd McConkey, though. I'm very excited about Cade Otton going into the future with that wide receiver core in Tampa Bay beat up. And then obviously, man, you're still very excited to have the wide receivers you have on your bench. DK being out, Nico being out. I still think that both of them are going to come back and dominate. Nico for sure. DK's honestly had a really good year as well. You're very excited to get both of these guys back, and your team's going to be back in full force. Obviously, no Rashee Rice full force, but dude, you put up 159 points. You had Troy Franklin in your flex, and you had Sterling Shepard starting at wide receiver. So just a massive week for Easton. Seth, on the other hand, didn't have a disappointing performance. He put up over 100 points. You can't be mad at it. You just unfortunately had matchup against Easton where his team just went off. Joe Burrow didn't play the best game, so that didn't really help. But Jonathan Taylor actually coming back fully healthy, having a good game. You love seeing that going into the future. Brian Robinson, a little bit of a disappointing game. This was just a messy game in general. They were down most of the game too, so just keep that in mind. Or no, they weren't down most of the game. I meant to say they weren't really running the ball a lot with Brian Robinson in this game. It seemed like, I mean, he did get 16 carries. He just didn't get involved. Okay, sorry. He just didn't get involved in the receiving game. That's what I meant to say. He didn't get involved in the receiving game that much, which what we would be more accustomed to seeing with him. Obviously, Eckler's been more of the receiving guy lately, but I still think Brian Robinson could blow up in that department soon. Khalil Shakir, very happy to see him have a blow-up game right here. Romeo Doubs was the other guy that you started. He didn't play terrible, not a bad game, but the Jordan Love injury honestly hurt him. Travis Kelce, big week for him. You are very excited about Travis Kelce and going into the future, obviously. Tony Pollard with a decent game as well. I mean, he's going to get the majority of the carries in this Tennessee backfield going into the future. But I will also say that with Tajay Spears coming back, we'll kind of see if that has anything go around with it. But overall, that's an interesting trade. What? This trade just happened in my league. Evan Ingram and Romeo Doubs for Dallas Goedert and Ramondre Stevenson. I mean, I don't think that that's like uneven as fuck, but I mean, I'd definitely take the Ramondre Stevenson side for sure. And then Dallas Goedert, I'm not really too sure when he's going to be back. Probably he should be back week 9, but that's an interesting trade right there. But yeah, going into the future with Seth's team, you still got T. Higgins, Jerry Jeudy, a little up and down. We'll kind of see what he does going into the future. Raheem Mostert, just kind of like a premium handcuff back to A-Chain. But yeah, pretty much. Big week for Easton. He's now 5-3 on the season. Seth goes to 2-6. Next up here, we got Josh and the Rebounders and Timmy Takeover. Very high scoring affair here. Two very solid teams going up against each other. Andy's team played very well. We'll start with them. CJ Stroud, a little bit of an average game for him. But Josh Jacobs is he's the guy who blew up this week. Josh Jacobs, you were really very excited to see him finally have a huge blow-up game like he did. He's actually played very good these last 2 weeks, so you're very excited about Josh Jacobs going into the future. Jordan Mason is kind of starting to be a little bit of a worried start every week now. I mean, obviously he has the injury, so we'll kind of see what happens with that. I'm not really too sure what to expect from him going into the future, especially if Christian McCaffrey does end up coming back. Then Jordan Mason, at that point, is just a handcuff back once again. CeeDee Lamb with a massive game. Really, CeeDee Lamb is what got Andy the dub this week. I mean, just a massive game from CeeDee Lamb. So he just absolutely outperformed everyone on this team this week. Trey McBride had a great game too. Very excited about him going into the future, as well as Jalen Waddle. Not the best game for Jalen Waddle, but I'm still very excited about him in the future. Rachaad White with a really good game as well. Ballsy to start Rachaad White over Bucky Irving, but it's like they're kind of even right now. So, but yeah. Bench still looks pretty decent with Nick Chubb and Bucky Irving, two pretty decent running backs to have on your bench. And then obviously the injuries have kind of played a big part on your team this year. So now you have a little bit of taking a hit on the wide receiver core that you have. But it'll be all right. I think your team's still fine, Andy. 6-2 on the year for Andy so far. And then we go to Jace's team. Jace had a great week. Josh Allen doing Josh Allen things. J.K. Dobbins had a good week. Kareem Hunt had a good week. Garrett Wilson had a good week. Marvin Harrison had a great week. Kincaid had a great week. Javonte, disappointing game for him for sure. And then obviously you can't predict Cedric Tillman to have 25 on your bench this week. So, I mean, Javonte Williams was the right play to make at flex this week. Cedric Tillman would have not been. It would have been such a risk to even do that in the first place. But you are a little bit excited about Cedric Tillman going into the future for sure after seeing that blow-up game from him. But, yeah, going into the future with both these teams, I still think that both these teams are probably going to be playoff teams, no doubt. And we'll kind of see how that goes. We still got a lot of fantasy football left. So, Jace is now 4-4. Next up, we got Bryce and Connor. Going into this matchup, I was expecting Bryce to get the dub this week, but I will say that Tuck's team, definitely he has some guys on his team that are scary, and I know he desperately needed a win this week, but it's never fun going up against Kyron Williams, and with how Najee Harris has been playing, scary about going up against these two guys lately. Combined 34 points for both of them. Diontae Smith comes out, has a good game as well. So very exciting about Diontae Smith, obviously. Kyle Pitts with the massive game, too. Very great matchup against Tampa Bay. Kyle Pitts with the 2 touchdowns. Very excited about Kyle Pitts, obviously. He's been getting more involved with this offense going forward. And then with Tuck, we'll kind of monitor and see when Isaiah Pacheco is actually going to come back. We'll see. But if he does come back sooner rather than later, you're excited to put him back in the lineup for sure. He'll be a great flex option because you're obviously got to start Najee Harris and Kyron Williams every week at this point. DeAndre Hopkins, obviously, we'll kind of wait and see with him. You're still very excited about Xavier Worthy. Legette's had a pretty up and down year, just a terrible offense. It's pretty hard to start him on a week-to-week basis. But yeah, big win for Tuck. We look at Bryce's team, obviously, big week for Kyler. Kyler continues to play very well these last couple weeks especially. So big week for Kyler Murray. Devon Achane, you love to see the guy finally getting back into the swing of things with, obviously, Tua being back. He's going to succeed very well. So big-time game for Devon Achane. And then you look at Aaron Jones, kind of a mid-game. A.J. Brown, kind of a mid-game, as well as Jackson Smith, who I thought was going to have a big week this week, didn't have the best. DJ Moore, a little bit of a dud this week, just not a lot of passing volume, unfortunately. Then Calvin Ridley, obviously on your bench with 17.6 Hurts, but it would have not mattered anyways. Either way, big win for Tuck. He needed one desperately. He now goes to 2-6. Bryce is now 3-5. So next up is Kyle and Burt. Kyle, once again, one of these other guys that desperately needed a win, going up against one of the better teams in our league. Right now, as it stands, I mean, this was a close matchup going in. It was down pretty much to Malik Neighbors. And Malik Neighbors doesn't put up the best performance. It was still a decent performance. Like, you take it all day, but it wasn't enough to get the win. And just very unfortunate. Just needed literally 3.1 points to get a dub, and he didn't get it. So, obviously, with Bird's team, Jade Daniels with 28. Could have been a little bit worse if that Hail Mary didn't count, but the Hail Mary did count, and so Jaden Daniels ended up having a great game. Derrick Henry, decent game. You'll take that all day. Jahmyr Gibbs with a great game. Once again, Jahmyr Gibbs continues to ascend into this offense. Jaden Reed's been definitely up and down so far these last few weeks. Obviously, the last 2 weeks he's been very disappointing, so I do still think Jaden Reed is the number one guy, and if Jordan Love is in this offense, I mean, he's still going to be one of the better guys to start on a week-to-week basis. You got to be very excited about Brian Thomas going into the future, though, with no Christian Kirk now. I mean, he already was solidified number one, but now he's just going to get more targets. I mean, as you look at his target volume, the last 2 weeks he's only been getting 4 and 5, but I do expect that to jump up to at least at least 6 or 7 now, no doubt. So Brian Thomas will get some more opportunities in this offense. You're very excited about Cooper Kupp going into the future. George Pickens you're excited about as well. So the thing about your team is you got depth, and that is what is huge to have in a league like this with not a lot of people to pick up on waivers on a week-to-week basis. So another thing to mention is with Kyle's team, so we'll get into his side. Geno Smith with not the best game. Geno Smith kind of struggled this week. But you're happy about the big performances from James Conner and Ramondre Stevenson. They came in and stepped up this week for you, as well as Justin Jefferson, Terry McLaurin, both of them having big weeks as well. Mark Andrews getting you, once again, Mark Andrews having a touchdown, and Mark Andrews helping your team out. First week having him, Kyle. I know you're happy to have Mark Andrews now with how he's been looking lately. So, and then Keon Coleman. Keon Coleman is starting to kind of ascend now. This is now back-to-back weeks of double-digit fantasy points. I mean, he continues to trend in the right direction. He's getting a lot more targets in this offense too, so you love to see this from Keon. And then you go to your bench. Obviously, you're not going to have Jameson Williams until week 11. And then Jacoby Myers, I mean, it's a terrible offense, but you do know that you're going to be the top guy in Vegas going forward other than Brock Bowers. He'll be the top receiver anyways, so just keep that in mind. You still got that premium handcuff in Rashawn Johnson. Antonio Gibson's another handcuff back as well. So a big win for Kyle. He goes to 2-6 on the year. Closest matchup that we had this week as well. So congrats to Kyle getting the close matchup of the week and winning it. And then last but not least, me and Dylan. Battle of the Sooner division right here. We'll start with Dylan's team right here. So really decent game. Great way to start off with Sam Darnold instead of Anthony Richardson. That was a good way to switch that for sure. Sam Darnold with the 23 points. Joe Mixon with a big game. Joe Mixon, I'm very excited about the rest of the year. I think he's going to end up being a top 5 running back easily at the end of the year with how he's been playing. I mean, look at these numbers. And we're just negate week 2. I mean, the dude has put up over 20 points per game in all 4 of the games he's been playing all the snaps. So, massive game for him. Obviously, you're a little bit excited about Chase Brown going into the future too, because, I mean, he will be the top guy in this Bengals offense going forward. Really, it was the receivers that hurt you, Dylan. The receivers are what hurt him the most. Amon-Ra it was a blowout. He didn't get a lot of usage in this game. Devontae Adams still, I think, is trying to get his rhythm going with the Jets right now. So just keep him in your starting lineup every week, I believe. I think you'll be fine. He'll end up having a blow-up game. You are actually excited about Evan Ingram going into the future. This is now something that you got to keep him in your starting lineup every week, tight end wise, because he will get a lot more opportunities with no Christian Kirk now as well. I will say this, and I do get it. I mean, with Anthony Richardson at QB, it is very worrisome to start Josh Downs. So I get from where his perspective came of why he started Josh Downs why he started Cole Kmet over Josh Downs. I completely get it. It was National Tight End Day. I was expecting Cole Kmet to have a big week too. I mean, he's been great this year. I mean, literally last week he put up 21. So, I mean, I get the start. It's just unfortunate because that start made you lose this week. And it wasn't because, I mean, you made the wrong decision. You made the right decision. It's just Josh Downs actually ended up having a massive game, and Anthony Richardson passed 10 for 30, and still, I mean, with Josh Downs having that impressive a performance was very shocking. So, and then you look at my side of things with obviously the Jordan Love injury really did worry me going into the rest of this week. I was like, man, I don't know if I'm going to win now with Jordan Love going down. Because he did start off the game somewhat decent. No passing touchdowns, but he did have 196 passing yards. So I think he was going to pass the 300 mark in this game. But overall, I think he's day-to-day. I think he will be back this week, so I'll be excited to have him. Massive game for James Cook. He is now in the top 10 in running backs this year, as I expected. I was expecting James Cook to be a very great player this year, and he's been playing very well for me. DeAndre Swift is finally coming into his own too, and I'm very excited about that. He had that pretty decent game this week against Washington, so hopefully he continues that trend. Obviously, very impressed with Jamar Chase. He's going to continue to be one of the top receivers in the NFL this year. Drake London, just a little bit of a dud game. Obviously, I'm not worried about it. I do still think Drake London's going to continue to flourish in this offense going into the future. Tucker Kraft with a massive performance. I was very happy to see that. Tucker Kraft with the big touchdown in that game. Puka, it's good to see Puka back. Puka is going to continue to be trending in the right direction going forward. And then my bench actually did very solid this week. Cortland Sutton had a massive game. Obviously, he is the main guy in Denver. And with this Denver offense actually looking a little bit better, granted, they had better matchups. Now they're going into a matchup with Baltimore where their secondary has been a little up and down this year. I think that is a pretty good matchup for Cortland Sutton this week. Sam Laporta with a big week. You love to see it. This was the first time I have ever seen Cortland Sutton actually have a decent game this year, other than that one reception touchdown game, the 11 points, but he only had one target. But in this game, he had 6 targets, and he was the main guy passing-wise in this offense, and I love to see it. So hopefully that going into the future will be very exciting to have him on the team. Very excited to see how they were going to use Ricky Pearsall, too, in that offense. Ricky Pearsall, I'm kind of high on going into the future with no Brandon Ayuk. And then, obviously, with Debo just being up and down with his injuries, too, I think Ricky Pearsall will have a bigger role in this offense going forward. Michael Wilson, not much to talk about with him. Christian Watson, just a highly congested wide receiver core. That's all I got to say. But yeah, boys, big time week for some of us. We'll go ahead and look at these standings real quick. Right now, as we are looking, still nothing's changed. The Pokes are still dominating record-wise. Big games from Andy and Easton really bring this Pokes division up once again. You got 2 6-2s, 2 5-3s, and 1 4-4, 1 3-5, and 1 2-6. You go into the Sooners division over here. Obviously, the best team in the league right now, record-wise. Chance, he continues to dominate, 7-1 on the year. I come in at second, but I'm 4-4. Me and Jace are tied 4-4. Dylan's 3-5. Bryce is 3-5, and then you got Tuck and Kyle at 2-6. So right now, the Pokes division is obviously looking better. There is at least 5 guys that have over a 60% chance of making the playoffs this year. So, and then you go into the Sooners division. There's only 3 that are 60% chance of making the playoffs. Everyone else is under 40%. So, right now, the guys that have really the small chances of making the playoffs are Tuck, Jack, and Kyle. But this season's still, it's still going. And we've seen people make the playoffs that were less than 2%. So, obviously, still have chances to get dubs. Hot teams right now, obviously the hottest team is Chance. He's won 6 in a row. Andy's won 3 in a row, as well as Easton. So, big weeks for them. And then Kyle, 2 wins in a row. He was 0-4, or what, 0-5? No, 0-6, sorry. He was 0-6, and now he's 2-6. So, 2 wins for Kyle now. Very excited. You should be for sure about your team going into the future with how they've been playing so far. As we're looking at people who have scored the most points, right now, the team that has scored the most is still Burt with 971 points. He continues to have scored the most points in the league this year. Coming in at second is actually Easton's team now. Easton's team is second, and I think Easton is going to be up at the top going into the future as well with how his team looks going into the future. I believe Andy is next. Andy is the third with 902. Very impressive year for him so far. Carson, 895 is fourth. Connor, 894 is fifth. And then I am sixth with 883. Seventh, who is seventh? Looks like it is Jace. So 7th is Jace. 8th is going to be Tuck. 9th is Seth. And then 10th is... wow. Yeah. 10th is Jack. That is so crazy. 11th is Chance, and then last is Kyle. That is so crazy. I obviously missed some people, I think. I did. I did miss some people. But, oh, no. No. Last is Bryce. I just realized that. Bryce is last with 739. Wow. So, yeah, that'll be the last place team for right now when it comes to points. So, who's had the most points scored against them? It is Tuck right now with 955, and I'm second with 948. So, damn. I've been playing really good in the division, though. Shit. 3-1 in the Sooners division. And then pretty much all my other losses, the 3 other losses were in the Pokes division. So, I haven't been playing good against the Pokes so far this year. Playing good against the Sooners, though. Only Sooner I lost to was Jace. So, but I will be taking on a Poke this week in Connor. So we're both 4-4, both wanting to get a dub this week and not be 500 anymore. So we'll see about that. We will also real quick look at the final standing projections. I won't be looking at the playoff brackets just yet. I'll kind of wait until the last couple weeks of doing that. I think that's the only time to really look at it, to be honest. But as we're looking at this, really, let's see. So right now, first place is going to be Chance. Second is Carson. Third is going to be Andy. Fourth is now Bert. Fifth goes to Easton. Sixth is me. Seventh is going to be Jace. 8th is going to be Connor. 9th is Bryce. 10th is Dylan. 11th is Seth. 12th is Kyle. 13th is Jack. And 14th is still is Tuck. So, here we are, man. Here we are. Yeah, it's been definitely up and down with a lot of these players this year. I mean, obviously the biggest jump was Jack projected number 1, and now he's down to 13. So big time swings on this final standing projection stuff so far. So, but yeah, that'll be it for the pod. Thank y'all for tuning in today. We will be back sometime